And that's what makes legacy media dangerous, because had he not checked her, this would have been a fact to somebody else. They would have heard that information and would have just ran with it without being willing to do any research to find out whether it's true or not.
Well, here is Tim Walz, who enlisted when he was 17 years old. He served in the National Guard for 24 years. And I'm not aware of any military service that J.D. Vance has ever served. So let's just make the comparison there. And what happened in the tragedy of the killing of George Floyd and then the unrest. Yeah, okay, pardon me for that.
RNC Research actually posted, "This is disgusting. There is no low to which Democrats won't sink." And that's becoming apparent because, honestly, had that man not said what he said, some people would have heard this and took it as a talking point completely. I mean, they would have did sprints running with this information right here. She wasn't aware of any military service that J.D. Vance had ever served. But is she aware of how, your boy Tim ran away when it was time for him to, go put on for the country? Just read some of these comments real quick before we show that clip. You want people to see that Kamala Harris is a fake? Then tell them that Kamala Harris is paying hundreds of social media influencers to pretend to support her. It will work, but you need to do it sooner rather than later. It's funny that they actually said that, because there actually is somebody who came out. That's a whole nother video, though. It's a whole nother video. But I do have a clip of a woman coming out saying that she's been paid by them. You know what? I'm gonna end up showing a clip of that, actually. But yeah, let's read something else. Tim Walz quit the military when he was called for deployment. Vance actually deployed. So there's no comparison, lady.
When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful.
I'm going to just say this. I ain't never heard of this man. I don't know this guy. He not like us. I just wanted to use that. I ain't gonna lie. But I don't know this man. For nothing. And I don't try. Look, I have to harshly judge him. I have to harshly, not necessarily harshly, but I have to, with great focus, put effort into finding out who he is and what type of person he is. I mean, not that I care, because who he's beside is somebody who I don't care about, but here's the point. Anyhow, most of us haven't heard of him either. You ain't heard of him. I ain't heard of him. So what are the Democrats trying to do? It says right here, Byron Donalds, nearly 3/4 of Americans have never heard of Tim Walz. So Democrats are deceptively trying to pass him off as a moderate. Don't let them.
That is the weakest answer from Nancy Pelosi. The reason why she had to pause is because she knows that Tim Walz is a radical progressive. Look, Tim Walz agrees with Nancy Pelosi. He agrees, obviously, with Kamala Harris that what we must have in our country are massively open borders. Tim Walz signed into law driver's licenses for illegal immigrants in Minnesota. He wanted health care for illegal immigrants in Minnesota. This guy is incredibly left-wing.
All this VP on VP violence right now, verbal violence, YouTube. Just verbal. It's a metaphor. Not okay. I shouldn't even have said that word at all. VP on VP. I mean, that's what you got to do, though. You know what I'm saying? JD Vance over here, making this case for your boy. For me, at least, I'm learning a lot through this exchange. He even fired back at Tim Walz after he mocked him for attending Yale.
Sir.
Last night, Governor Walz suggested that because of your Ivy League education and your Silicon backing your political career, that you yourself are part of the elite. What are your first impressions of them trying to frame you this way to the American public?
Well, look, I came from a family where nobody in my family had ever gone to law school. I grew up in a poor family. The fact that Tim Walz wants to turn it into a bad thing, that I actually worked myself through college, through law school, and made something myself, to me, that's the American dream. And if Tim Walz wants to insult it, I think that's frankly pretty bizarre. Now, look, what really bothers me about Tim Walz, it's not even the positions that he's taken, though certainly he has been a far left radical. You know what really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform? When the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country,
obviously this is the full clip from what we watched earlier, right? Okay, I failed at saying that. My bad, y'all.
to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out right before you actually have to go. I also think it's dishonest. Something, again, if you guys ever get an opportunity to ask Tim Walz or Kamala Harris some questions, he made this interesting comment that the Kamala Harris campaign put out there, and I bet they're regretting they put it out there now, because he said that and he was making a point about gun control, he said we shouldn't allow weapons that I used in war to be on America's streets. Well, I wonder, Tim Walz, when were you ever in war? What was this weapon that you carried into war, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, and he has not spent a day in a combat zone? What bothers me about Tim Walz is the stolen valor garbage. Do not pretend to be something that you're not. And if he wants to criticize me for getting an Ivy League education, I'm proud of the fact that my mamaw supported me, that I was able to make something of myself. I'd be ashamed if I was him and I lied about my military service like he did.
From the window to the walls. No, we just gonna stay at the window. We ain't going nowhere. We ain't going to the walls. We gonna stay at the window, okay? Anyhow, just then, I Am Meme just posted this video. Walz is a traitor. Somebody has on what appears to be a water tank. I don't know. I could be wrong. But it says, let me just read the caption. It is Minnesota National Guard leaders exposed Tim Walz for stolen valor, lying about his rank, and quitting when his unit was deployed to Iraq. These are things that obviously we just found out from JD Vance, but let's get some more details.
He's back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
He abandoned us. You know, I mean, what the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, he just... As soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Barron's new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Barron says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Barron was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, if this guy quit, and if I say I'm not going to do it, I mean, what the hell kind of leadership is that? If a company would say that we're going to deploy to Iraq or somewhere and you're going to be gone for whatever amount of time, and then a foreman just says, no, I'm not going. I mean, what does that say to the 500 people that work in that factory?
Barron would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Barron says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there. You know, when he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and, you know, all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of lots of cards coming in the mail, you know, for him to be elected. They said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walz wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walz was reduced in rank to an E8 Master Sergeant after retirement and his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked Governor Walz if he's using the command sergeant major rank on his campaign website for political gain this year. A spokesperson said this has been in the news before and pointed us to a past story where Walz said, quote, "Normally this type of partisan political attack only comes from one who's never worn a uniform."
It's stolen valor is really what it is. I don't know of anybody else that's done what he's done, but we called it the truth about Tim Walz.
In 2018, Barron's gave the story the full court press.
We, retired command sergeant majors of the Minnesota National Guard, feel it is our duty and responsibility to bring forth the truth as we know it concerning his service record. I put together information on it and I sent it out to every single radio station and newspaper and TV station I could in the state. The bottom line in all of this is gut-wrenching and sad to explain. When the nation called, he quit.
Twin Cities TV stations and the Star Tribune were silent, even after Barron says the newspaper checked it all out. The Star Tribune endorsed Walz in 2018 for governor. Between lockdowns, riots, unchecked crime, and a charred police precinct, Barron's felt he had no choice but again to come forward.
Allowing that to be burned down was just like having the Alamo get burned down. It's like, no, you defend that to the last man. You know, if he would have went to Iraq, he'd still be hiding under his desk over there, because that's just, just the cowardice that I seen portrayed with him.
So how about when he also comes out and he calls you guys 19-year-old cooks?
I'd take any 19-year-old cook before I'd go to war with him. I don't know how he could even utter such a statement. I mean, it's just absolutely sad.
So this election year, it's all built up again to Barron's new grain bin message.
He called Jacob Fry an abject failure. So I was like, that's what he is.
Walz is a traitor, also made a return.
And the last one I put together, he said it himself too, as well, if they don't like my job, they can vote me out. So I wrote, vote him out. We need to vote him out.
This is the message that needs to get out right here. This is the one that everybody needs to see. Seeing people whom watched this man coward out, who served, kind of served, because he didn't serve if he served but got out. Anyhow, you're getting the real stories from the people who actually can speak to the coward that he is. Still getting to know what type of coward he is. But yeah, they said this video is going to be a pain in the butt for Walz. He can't hide from this. This is something that the American people are definitely going to frown on. We look for leadership. We look for people who are strong leaders, people who can take command, people who are confident in their abilities. You reek of cowardice right now. Seems the bigger a liar you are, the higher you make in the Democratic Party these days. It's a total lie. Walz perpetuated and stolen valor, like the man who replaced him mentioned in the video somebody wrote. At least he went to Iraq, unlike the 5-time draft dodger. What's his face? Whatever that was. Anyone who deployed in theater and still votes for this man is unbelievably stupid, somebody said. Can't wait for him to debate JD Vance. I'm sure he gonna eat him alive. It's gonna be gory.